things, because what these guys are looking for is a softer expression of life. What is woman? Woman is life, and when they go out into the world, all the good-looking, beautiful Stacys treat them as creeps. They're negative towards him. Life is signaling towards him, you're a lower male, you're weak, you're pathetic, you're disgusting. And they just want to experience that beautiful femininity, which is looking at them and smiling and cute and appreciating and loving being around them. So they go to these OnlyFans girls who know how to be cute and act like an anime girl and act soft and act gentle. And they develop all these, they feel a fulfillment for all these emotions. And so you see the whole spectrum. This guy's trapped in depression. He's experienced an awful lot of suffering in his life. He has an existential crisis where he feels like he can't overcome this. And so he goes and he pedestalizes this girl. And then he feels these huge rushes of oxytocin and all these simp feelings that make him engage in this. And of course, Schopenhauer and the incels, the chuds, would see this and they'd be like, that's disgusting, that's pathetic, that dude is trapped within the matrix. What he needs to do is crush his feelings. He needs to squash all feelings inside of him, because look at the way they're deceiving him. He needs to crush his feelings, and that's right in a way, but it doesn't go far enough. You see, there are emotions, there are feelings, there are chemistry missing from the simp's life that dramatically change his perception of his reality. For example, testosterone. If you have very high testosterone, effort and suffering feels good. Now, this is a big deal, because Schopenhauer is asserting that life, when you look at it, is suffering. It is full of pain, it is full of struggle, it is not something good in the end. If you think about life, think about all your struggles and your pain, it's not nice, it feels bad. But here we have a chemical organization that can be installed inside your body that actually stops pain from feeling like pain, and instead it turns into satisfaction. It turns into something that gives you the will to participate in this. Now, this is a very interesting emotional spectrum, because it changes an awful lot about our situation. If you are full of will, if you are full of life, if you are full of a certain energetic state, you do not suffer as much as the simp. And therefore your approach and your experience of reality is dramatically different. Schopenhauer's criticism of reality is that it is full of too much suffering. This is why it is evil. But if you are pumped full of test, if you're juiced out of your gills on testosterone, you don't feel that suffering just the same. Now, that changes an awful lot about this accusation we place towards reality. Now, this turns into a big clash of the titans between Schopenhauer and Nietzsche, and in order to explain why, I'm going to have to get into some very advanced philosophy. Please pull up your pants, whip up your bootstraps, take off your belt and spank yourself with it, because we're going to have to dive into this now. Now, Nietzsche is accusing Schopenhauer of making a philosophical mistake, which is why he ended up resenting women and being essentially an elaborate simp who cut off his own testicles because he couldn't deal with the realities of the world. He was a low-T cuck, black-pilled incel dork. This is what Nietzsche was calling them, even though Nietzsche couldn't get a girlfriend and was basically a loser his whole life. Funny how that works. Now, Schopenhauer presented this idea where he talks about the world as will and representation. All right, let's get ready for this now. Now, he was pointing out something quite fascinating about our problem of perception, our problem of understanding the truth, because isn't this what philosophers spend all their time talking about instead of contributing to society, talking about reality and the truth? Now, there's a problem where when I look at the world, I am detecting all this information from my senses, and I'm bringing it into my head, and I'm having to create the sort of idea of what the world is in my mind. I have to create a story in my head, because I can't possibly actually properly stream in all the information about the world into my senses, because there's too much of it. There's too much stuff going on. It's like trying to fit the whole internet in my mind. I just can't do it. So what I do is I create this little bubble inside of my head, this little perspective inside of my head, this way of seeing the world. Now, a lot of people actually would call this your ego, my little bubble of awareness or consciousness. Now, Schopenhauer would often point out that this bubble is a representation in my head of what reality is, but it's not actual reality itself. The world out there is much, much more complicated. There's many more things going on. And if we could push away our ego or whatever it is and observe the world as it actually is, we'd see this thing that is moving through reality and changing in all these different forms. We'd essentially see what we now understand as energy. So matter, this magic mouse, iPad and all this. This block is not a thing. This block is actually a big lump of energy that is moving so slow that I perceive it as a solid object, when in fact it's energy. And this light that is shining on me is energy. And what I'm doing is I'm making noises that are spreading energy out towards you. Reality itself is energy in its entirety. And Schopenhauer called this the will. Reality itself is energy, but this energy is almost like alive. It's got a desire. Energy is pushing things in a direction. When you feel sun, it does something to you. It hits you with heat. When you touch electricity is polarized. Electricity wants to travel. It wants to go from a positive place to a negative place, or maybe it's the other way around. It's polarized, so it moves. Energy has this sort of desire, this life into it. It has this electricity to it. And Schopenhauer pointed out that that's what the world actually is that it's this will that we see everywhere. When you look at a tree, what is happening with a tree is that there's some type of will, there's some type of energy force that's driving that to grow, to explode. There's some type of there's a will inside of you that's just the same. There's a will in the world itself. Everything is, what the world is a will, and we represent the world to ourselves because we cannot possibly comprehend the entirety of the world. And so we have this problem with truth, with reality, where when we look at the world, we have to, in some sense, make a smaller representation inside of our heads. And so Schopenhauer basically says that, well, what the intelligent man does, by this lucky or unlucky happenstance of nature, we've developed this higher consciousness that's able to create really rational conceptions of reality inside our head. We can represent reality to ourselves in these brilliant ways. And he believed that we could see reality clearly. We could create this ego inside of our head that has this perception and observes reality and figures out what's going on and realizes it's a matrix scam ran by women to keep us trapped in the energetic will of samsara so that we murder all the animals and become pretty much a dickhead. And Schopenhauer celebrated this. He basically turns around and said, that rational capacity for us to observe what the world actually is, this is brilliant. We can use that and we can realize what's going on and we can step away from it. I can think. And my ability to think allows me to reason that the world is evil, so I must stop participating in it. Now, I hope you're following what's happening here, because what comes next is Nietzsche calls this out specifically. He talks about this very funny mistake that Schopenhauer makes, where he assumes that there is an I, there is an ego. Schopenhauer talks about this ego, this intellect, this capacity to create these delusional representations of the world inside of your head. And he uses one of those to judge reality. So he acknowledges that we have this faculty within man, but then he uses that faculty and thinks that it is some type of separate entity from the world, that this rational capacity inside of our minds is not attached to it's not a part of this will. It's not a part of this energetic, shifting samsara. It's not a part of this world of forces and drives and urges and passions. For some reason, Schopenhauer just assumes that thing is separate. I am able to perceive the world in this perfectly objective and separate way. And Nietzsche throws all the books off the table and says, that's not true. That is not true. This I is a delusion. Because what is the fundamental, what is the real is inside of you is the will. Your will. You're a big ball of energy, just like life. You come out of the same world that all the rest of us come out of. You're from the same world the snake is from. You're from the same world the lion is from. You're from the same world the thunderbolt is from. And you're a thunderbolt. You're a little package of will. You're a little package of fire. And you express this tyranny and this vivid energy that is living within you. And everything that comes out of you, what is the center of yourself, is not this ego, this thing that rationalizes. That's not the quote-unquote you that you celebrate so much. Instead, it's this life force inside of you that speaks to you through your passions, through your urges. And that's what you are. And in fact, that life force is the thing that created this rational ego of yours. So it could allow itself to enact power in more complicated ways. So it could plan towards the future. So it could reason out logical possibilities and create more advanced weapons and take over the world by making nukes and calling people incels, learning how to insult people in abstract ways. This is what your ego was designed to do. And it was your will that manifested that. Now you might be saying to yourself, Steph, I'm here for advice on how to get a girlfriend. I'm here to get red pills on the woman question. I'm here to figure out who runs the world, what's going on with all these women. Well, look, we need to understand these things because we're here to talk about reality. This is what this whole red pill thing is. And these two philosophical incels, these Jedi Knights fighting in the Star Wars battle, are trying to discover what is the nature of the real world. world and how we should relate to reality itself. And Nietzsche is pointing out that Schopenhauer made a mistake. Schopenhauer saw the world as this feminine entity, and he saw this feminine entity as fundamentally this energetic, will-striving, passion-filled, lust-orientated monster of samsara, this life thing. And it was something that he just didn't want to have to deal with. He saw himself as a rational man who can step away from this feminine nonsense, and he should leave the world. The world is not good enough for him. The world is ugly and decrepit and botched, and he should step away from it. And he is the rational, angelic, wise man who escapes from this tyranny of the world. And Nietzsche pushed back hard against this. And he said that there's a huge mistake in here. There's something very honest and very true. Life is a woman. But Nietzsche pointed out that there's a weakness inside Schopenhauer that led him to do this. Because when you understand that the world is will, and you understand that you're also will as well, the only way that you can have a negative feeling towards the world is that if your will is not strong enough to impose yourself upon the world. Now look at it this way, to put it as simply as possible. Schopenhauer looked out into the world, looked out into reality, and he categorized it as some type of neutral feminine force, some type of all-encompassing feminine monster that is here to destroy your little male life. And you're too feeble and weak in the face of her, and all you can really do is walk away. You can't control her, you can't tame her, you can't do anything like this. She has some insatiable, irrational urge and will inside of her, and she wants to eat you and destroy you, and all you can do is to try to separate yourself from this, to try to walk away. It's like he's got a crazy wife and he doesn't know how to deal with her, so he just, hides out in his study, in his library or something like that, and pretends she doesn't exist. That's his best way of dealing with this. And Nietzsche looks at this and he's like, Schopenhauer, you're a fucking bitch, man. You can't cope. That's your problem here. You're trying to escape the challenge of life, and you're coming up with this truth-telling, truth-sell perspective here by saying that, you figured out what reality is, you figured out the truth, you figured out women are the truth, women are reality, and they're fucking crazy. I don't want to participate in this at all. And Nietzsche turns around. Nietzsche, who never had a girlfriend in his life, it's amazing you can see the world this way. Nietzsche turns around and he says, men create reality. The masculine will, this centrifuge of energy that lives inside of you seize reality. You project your will upon reality and give reality a destiny. Yes, the world out there is crazy. Yes, women are all batshit insane, running around in circles like Dionysian monsters. That is true. They are actually like that. They're impassioned. They're irrational. The world itself, samsara, is like that as well. It's full of pain. It's full of suffering. It's full of all this crazy stuff. It does not have a purpose. But you are the active force. You are this conglomerate of will, this buildup of energy inside yourself. You are that, and you can give it a purpose. You can lead it instead of trying to run away from it because you're too weak to engage with the fight that is necessary. You're too weak to launch yourself upon reality, upon woman, upon life, and actually give it a destiny, tame it, lead it. You don't have the testosterone, the power, the will to power inside yourself to do that. You, Schopenhauer, you run away because you're a spiritual cock. But Nietzsche's saying if you had the strength, if you had the power, like someone like Napoleon or Alexander the Great, you could launch yourself on the world itself and spank it into giving it a destiny. You could lead it the direction you wanted to go. You have that much power inside of yourself. This is what we mean by a superman. You have the capacity to launch yourself as this tyrant, as this fireball of will, as this monster of energy, as this Dionysus, and give reality a destiny. And this is the exact same relationship man has to woman. If man has the fire, if man has the strength, he can bring the feminine out of woman and he can lead woman.